everyone. Thank you for attending this meeting of the Cabinet held today on Wednesday, the 17th of November 2021. For those that don't know me, my name is Councillor Paul Foster. I'm the leader of the council and I'm chair of the meeting. Councillor Mick Titherington is the vice chair and deputy leader. Members of the Cabinet are present here at the Civic Centre. Also present with us are our statutory officers and other officers required to support the meeting. Other members in the Civic Centre should please switch on their microphone to indicate if they wish to speak and to switch them off once they have finished speaking to avoid any feedback. Other members of the council may dial into the meeting via Microsoft Teams to observe or ask any questions. Members on Teams are asked to keep their microphone on mute during the meeting and then use the please raise your hand function to indicate a request to speak at the appropriate time, and then to mute their microphone once again once they have finished speaking. Reports will be presented by the relevant portfolio holder, after which I will bring the item into Cabinet. Once Cabinet has considered the report, I will invite any comments from other members. Any members of the public in attendance will be invited to ask questions, should they wish to do so. After all, the council members have been invited to speak. Individual members of the public were restricted to speaking to a total of 5 minutes during the whole meeting. Please note that this meeting is recorded and live streamed via YouTube. The web link for this is displayed on the agenda for the meeting. In addition, we are testing the live captions function on Teams to make meetings more accessible to the general public. Thank you, and I will now formally open the meeting. Before we proceed with the first agenda item, I would like to hand over to Councillor Bylinski Gelder, the Cabinet Member for Communities, Social Justice and Wealth Building, who would like to make a public announcement about the Round 2 Boost Fund allocations for each of the community hubs. Councillor Bylinski Gelder.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say a thank you to the community hubs for their Boost Fund application forms, all on time and really interesting, full of information, and for deciding between yourselves what your priorities are and then working with officers to put forward these projects on behalf of your communities. It's great to see that all the hubs have submitted an application, and I'll now announce which projects we've decided to support. First of all, Eastern Parishes, they've asked for money for a winter warmth project around the distribution of packs to older, potentially vulnerable residents, and we've funded that project for them. Bamber Bridge, Lostock Hall and Waltonley Dale, as part of their Love Where You Live engagement campaign for children to redesign litter and anti-dog fouling posters. So we've agreed to fund that for 1,481. This is the same as the Leyland and Farrington Love Where You Live. Again, an engagement campaign for children to design litter and anti-dog fouling posters to feature on banners and signs in the key areas such as parks and play areas. We've used intel from previous projects like this, and they've worked really well. People really like seeing the kids' pictures on the entrance to parks and things like that. So they're going to do that again, and again that's another 1,481. Penwitham put 2 projects forward. One was for Broad Oak Welcome Feature, and this was really interesting actually, because we've seen lots of different sculptures and things around South Ribble. We've seen the horse, and there's one in Bamber Bridge with the tree. Lostock Hall, we've got the soldier, and Penwitham have asked, as part of this community hub boost fund, for a deer themed installation. Deers are regularly seen and photographed in Penwitham, along with the wildflower planting they want on a roundabout. So we've given them the funding for that, and we've increased it because we've suggested that we'd like to see something maybe more ambitious than their original proposal. So we've upped that to £6,000 from the original 2,937. Penwitham also asked for a second project, which was a coach house, which has just recently been refurbished, and it's really good to see that we're trying to invite people there. So well done again to Penwitham Hub, a festive event to showcase a new coach house venue, including lighting, sound equipment, live music and hot drinks. So we're happy to fund that out of the Boost Fund. And the final project is Western Parishes, and they asked for Garden Angels, which is an initiative to set up a group of volunteers who will help to maintain the gardens of people who are unable often to do it themselves, who may be vulnerable to crime or rogue traders. So the thought behind this, I believe, is that people, it's like the broken window effect, where if a garden looks overgrown and overrun and not looked after, it might attract the wrong kind of visitors to it. So this is to support them. So they've received the full funding requested for that as well. So that's all I'd say. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Daniela. Great stuff. So, sorry, go on.
Just so you know, the office, I've already asked the officer to write to everybody, all the chairs and vice chairs, to just formalise that so you can see it all in writing tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, really good stuff, that, Daniela, and pleasing to see. When's the next round of funding?
March. So the next boost fund is March. We've got money left over from this one, so that's good as well. It means we've got more flexibility, more project ideas. So yeah, welcome more applications. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's for Cabinet to note, and you're going to obviously email that out to members as well. I'll get the office to Daniela, and it's good to see that every one of the community hubs has an allocation. Well, they got what they asked for basically, didn't they? So, which is great news. Good stuff. So we'll move on then. So apologies for absence. There aren't any because everyone's sat here. Declarations of interest. If a member has a pecuniary interest, they are requested to leave the meeting completely. The member can then rejoin the meeting following the completion of the item in question. Does anyone have any interests to declare? No? Okay. Move on. Agenda item 3 is the minutes of the last meeting. I have the minutes of the last meeting in front of me for approval. I'm happy to propose those. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Mick. Any comments or queries from any members of the Cabinet? Any comments or queries from any members not on Cabinet? Okay, are we happy to accept those minutes? Approved. Right, just briefly, the members of the Cabinet will recall that the meeting on the 16th of June of this year, I gave a commitment to the right to the residents of Buckshaw Village, explaining the reason for the use of Section 106 monies received under the Buckshaw Village Section 106 agreement, and this commitment was confirmed by a decision of this Cabinet. You're then also aware that I arranged for the article to be placed in the South Ribble Matters newsletter, the summer version, which set out the council's position and was delivered to all the residents of Buckshaw Village. I'd just like to confirm with Cabinet that they're happy that they believe this meets the commitment given in the June meeting of the Cabinet and complies with the decision made by us. Is everyone happy to reconfirm that? Yep. Okay. That's to be noted, please, officers. Okay. Moving on. Agenda item 4, the Cabinet Forward Plan, the notice of executive decisions. And as all members are aware, the Cabinet Forward Plan is accessible via the link web on the agenda as it is a live document. Have members any comments on the forward plan or the notice of any executive decisions? There's quite a lot of information on there at the moment. As I say, we're becoming very busy very quickly post pandemic, as we expected to be, and clearly we're driving through with our agenda. It's good to see it's full, it's good to see it's live, and as I say, there's advance notice there for residents as well and other members of the council when key decisions are looking to be made. Any comments from anyone? Any comments from anyone not on council? Councillor Ogilvie?
Yeah, it's just, thanks Chair, it's just an administrative question really. Is it possible for the forward plan to appear in ModGov? We go into ModGov for all other sorts of reports, and I just think it would be helpful if it was contained in there.
We can, I suppose, the problem is, Councillor Allen, it's a live document, hence why we put the live link. When any member presses on at any one time, they will go to the live document. I suppose what we could look to do, and we can ask Darren to do this, on the day of the meeting, we could give you we could publish the forward plan as it is that day, but it might not necessarily be the same forward plan 6 hours later. But we can look to do that. Yes, Gary, happy with that? Yeah, but we'll do that. So we'll just say it's 12 o'clock of the day of the meeting, yeah? Yeah, okay. Right, I'm happy to propose that we note this plan. We have a seconder. Thanks, Mick. Everyone happy to note that? Cool. Right, moving on to agenda item 5, which is the corporate strategy quarterly performance monitoring report for quarter 2 2021-2022. Firstly, this went through the scrutiny panel on Monday, and I unfortunately had to tender my apologies for that meeting on Monday, so I thank the Chief Executive and Vicky for standing in for me. I was unfortunate at a family funeral, so I couldn't attend. However, I have been briefed on the outcome of the meeting. Clearly, the scrutiny panel, as always, looked in depth at the quarterly performance, and there were a number of recommendations that they put forward. And as usual, before I present the report, we'll just quickly talk through the recommendations and comments from the budget and performance panel. Additionally, this has gone through and been discussed informed about the informal cabinet meeting as well. So the scrutiny, budget and performance panel thanked the Chief Executive and the Shared Service Lead for Transformation and Partnerships for their report and answering the questions. Number 2, they welcome the reassurance that the Council has robust data quality policies and procedures in place. Number 3, asked for future performance indicators to be chosen more appropriate comparators which are similar to South Ribble and our borough to help make the most of benchmarking data available. Try saying that twice. 4, expresses gratitude for the offer of the outcomes of the post-COVID economic summit and updated key issues for South Ribble being provided to members. Number 5, expresses concern at the time taken to process new housing benefit claims and requests that the plans to improve this are expedited and additional resources be made available to improve performance. I couldn't agree more. 6, requests that further information be provided on how the number of trees that are planted that survive and thrive are monitored and managed. And finally, number 7, congratulates the planning team on the improved performance regards to the percentage of planning applications decided within 8 weeks. So, Jonathan, please do pass that on. I'm happy to accept all those recommendations from the performance from the scrutiny panel. Is everyone happy to accept them as a cabinet? Good, thank you. So, moving into the report itself, the performance continues to be really, really good within the authority. Members will all be aware that there is an awful lot going on in all the directories, and we're still going through the implementation of shared services. However, it is critical that we deliver our key priorities and continue to deliver our key priorities. Moving forward and looking at the 4 main areas, exemplary council, there's one issue there that you'll note, that which is the delivering the year 1 of the joint strategy, which is Amber. And I think that's well known that this cabinet is prioritising the IT and the digital strategy and the challenges that we have there to ensure that they support both the council and the residents. And it's pleasing to see that we're almost at the point that we'll be fully implementing the strategy as quickly as possible. And we are confident that, clearly, given a little bit more time, that by the end of the next, probably by the end of this municipal year, we'll be fully back on track where we need to be. One of the challenges we have with IT, as we're all aware, is the chronic shortage of staff and trying to recruit into key positions, which we're clearly keeping a close eye on. Thriving communities, I'm pleased to report that every key project there is on track and on green. Same for a fair local economy that works for everyone. All the key projects are on green and are on track. And then goods, homes, green spaces, healthy places. Again, everything's on track. Really pleasing, Matthew, that Worden Hall has really gathered some momentum there. The refurbishment back, we're having slight challenges when we got started with the procurement. It appears to be well back on programme now and clearly still within budget. And I know there's an awful lot of local, local residents now up there having a good look round, and we're really looking forward to seeing that come to fruition in the spring. And other than that, there's the key performance indicators towards page 24-25 onwards. Lots of information. As I say, it's been scrutinised heavily by the scrutiny committee. Happy to take any questions that any members of the Cabinet might have on the performance report. No questions? Any questions from any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Bretherton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just as a matter of interest, on page 20.31, it mentions the installation of 4 electric vehicle charging points, and it says that's to be completed in Leyland, Bamber Bridge, Lostock Hall and Penwitham. I'm just wondering how they will work. I know the ones in the Civic Centre car park are free to use. Will these be free to use, or will there be a charge? And if so, what kind of charge will that be for our residents?
Jennifer, Mick?
They are going to be chargeable. We haven't. We're working with the company now to make sure that the charges are reasonable, in line with all the other charges that charging points have throughout the county. So in line with Lancashire County Council's charging points as well as our own. So they will be chargeable.
Yeah, just on that point as well, Damien, we were also looking at a number of other charging points and opportunities throughout the borough. We want to see as many charging points as we possibly can. I think there's many areas within the UK that are way behind where they need to be with the charging points, and we need to be careful that the electric cars don't start outstripping the availability of the charging points. I think it's a huge challenge moving forward, but I can report that we are looking at that closely. And yeah, there's another bid gone in this week for more grant funding. Any other questions from anyone? Any questions from the member of the public, Mr. Derbyshire?
Thank you, Paul. I'd like to mention something on point 36. As you'll guess, it's about trees. I'd just like to read a letter from, would you believe, Prince Charles. Prince Charles, writing in the Country Life magazine, lamented the good faith initiative from developers and road builders who failed to manage planting schemes to maturity. He said, quote, "Sadly, I have come across many big planting schemes initiated a bit in good faith by agencies or housing developers that forget the final stage and therefore do little to increase the numbers of trees." I think Howard's Way, whatever it's called, comes to mind, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not, yeah. Anyone else? Right, so that report is for noting. We're happy to report it, and we thank the officers for the continued efforts and the performance of the authority. Moving forward, it's agenda item 6. It's the infrastructure funding statement, and it's Councillor Bill Evans.
Thank you, Chair. With this item, I'm after the approval for Cabinet about the infrastructure funding statement so we can display it on the council website for the next 12 months. In 2010, the government issued the Community Infrastructure Levy Regulations as amended, and this is specifically for Regulation 121A. And it is now a requirement to publish an infrastructure funding statement for the previous 12 months by the 31st of December. The report itself is a factual summary of developer contribution receipts, allocations, expenditure and any unspent or unallocated receipts collected from Section 106 monies and Community Infrastructure Levy within the financial year 2020 to 2021. Also, there's a requirement there to publish an infrastructure list that details any infrastructure projects or types of infrastructure which we intend will be or may be wholly or partially funded by the Community Infrastructure Levy. The infrastructure list will replace the CIL Regulation 123 list. That's about it. It's a legal requirement for us to do it. And it's just a factual document telling you, what monies have and haven't been spent and what projects we're looking at. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Bill. It's an interesting read if you're into this sort of thing, isn't it? But it does. I don't know what I say, but what it does do on a positive side, it does demonstrate annually again a lot of the infrastructure and the investment that the council's making in the borough. And I draw your attention to page 40, 41, 42, where there's clear examples there of where some of the Section 106 money has been spent. There's an awful lot going on, and pleased, as I remind colleagues on the Cabinet, we continued with this through the pandemic, and it's great credit to the officers. And every time we go around the borough and we look at all these new play areas that has been funded by 106 contributions, they're always run with the kids, loving it, really high quality, and it's pleasing to see. And there's obviously the site map that we're working on up on Strawberry, and it's really good, really good. So long may it continue. And as I say, the Section 106 monies within South Ribble spent far too long historically in the bank. There was a huge amount of funds, and we committed as an administration to using those for the community, on the behalf of the community, and it's good to see it's happening. So thanks, Bill, and I'm happy to second the proposal. Any comments from Councillor Tomlinson?
Yeah, and to echo those comments that you've just made, really, Leader, it is really pleasing. The list on page 36 and 37 that looks at the things that we're still intending to do. And as you said, today I've been to have a look on Bent Lane in Leyland at Strawberry Fields, and the play equipment is actually being delivered well, not as we speak, but it was being delivered today. And I know the local residents, they're really excited about it. And later on the agenda, we look at more investment in playground equipment in Bamber Bridge. So it is nice to see all these investments going into our local communities, and this report just gives us another chance to look at what we're aiming to do in the coming years. It's really pleasing.
Thanks, Matt. Just remind me, there was a significant underspend on there, wasn't there, on the contamination from what was allocated?
Eventually we did. Your members will recall, not only did we have a budget for the equipment itself, but we agreed a budget to do the remediation works on the contaminated land. And it's not often that we get such pleasing news, but the original agreed potential budget was 200,000, and I think the actual cost of the remediation itself came in at £80,000. So thank you for giving me the chance to report on an underspend.
£120,000 to spend on another playground somewhere, which is great. Any other comments for Bill? Questions for Bill? No. Any questions for any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think most of us are familiar with this old 1, 2, 3 list that's been around for some while, and I remember sitting down sort of time and time again for hours and hours putting this list together with the planners. I think my question is from the old 1, 2, 3 list, which is carried forward, is there anything being taken off that 1, 2, 3 list that's not actually in this Cllr infrastructure list?
Bill, you can with pleasure have that.
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I will find out for you and come back to you, unless Jonathan can.
Yeah, we did review this list quite comprehensively about two years ago, Councillor Smith. So I think there were a couple of things that we did remove because they were dated, basically. But I can double check back and I'll let you know in an email what they were.
Well, yeah, I can imagine some of the projects could very well have been completed and taken off, possibly, but ones that are not completed should obviously still be on that list, should be transferred year after year until whatever. But yeah, I'll look forward to that information. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Any other questions from anyone? Comments? No? Okay, Bill, can you just remind us what you're asking us to vote on here?
Yes, recommendation to Cabinet is that you approve the infrastructure funding statement so we can display it on the council website for the next year.
Perfect. I'm happy to second that. Does everyone support? Good. It's unanimous. Moving on. Agenda item 7 is the Social Justice Programme, the 2021-22 update. Councillor Bylinski Gelder is to present this item. Aniela.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not going to present it, hopefully. Hopefully the lead member, Jackie, will present it. But just before I hand over to Councillor Jackie Alty, the lead member for social justice, to introduce this report, I'd like to say thank you to the officers for all of their support. I know that John James is here. We've spent a lot of time discussing a wide variety of aspects over the last 9 months. And I thank Jackie, has had a lot of ideas which couldn't necessarily be written in and incorporated into the report, but I'm certain that she'll be continuing to feed into this programme as we move forward. And it is just for noting because the projects will be developed. So I'm hoping that Jackie's internet is working. I don't know, how do we...
Okay. Jackie, are you there? Hey. Over to you. You're on mute, Jackie. Right, give us a second, Jackie. We can't hear you at the moment. I'm just going to have a look at IT. We're just going to have a look at IT. Just bear with us a second. Howard, can you just say something again for us, please, to check it, see if it's Jackie's connection or whether it... Oh, no, we can hear you. It's fine. Jackie, do you know what I'm going to ask you to do, Jackie? I'm going to ask you to do something really technical. I think if you just logged back off and logged back in again, we just see if it works, and then kick it at the same time, yeah? And then we'll just wait a second for you to log back in, Jackie, yeah? Jackie, I'm so sorry we can't hear you. We've got no volume coming through whatsoever. Aniela has volunteered to read out your statement. Are you happy to do that just at the moment? And then, but what we will say to you, Jackie, is it's a wonderful piece of work, and you know it's really pleasing to see the work of a lead member, and you've really grabbed this and dragged this forward for us. It's a brand new priority, as you know, for the council, and so thank you so much for the work you've done. The report it's fascinating to read, and we're really excited as a cabinet as well to see where we're going to go moving forward. So we'll get Aniela to read it out for you, and
we'll move to the next item, and we'll just always see if we can fix it.
We'll get Aniela to read it. Okay. Aniela's going to read it out for you, Jackie. Yeah.
I apologise in advance because I've not read it through because she's just sent it me. So if I read it wrong, Jackie, I'm sorry. Okay. So good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to contribute in driving forward a social justice agenda. I consider the role of lead member for social justice and equality a privilege, and I look forward to working with members of the Cabinet, and in particular my sponsor, Councillor Bylinski Gelder, and the wider Council. I want to thank the officers, Vicky Willett and John James Martin, for their attention to detail and consistent support in producing this report. Social justice is a concept noticeable predominantly by its absence, when those who are disadvantaged and vulnerable are permitted to suffer the impact of inequality. Justice can be viewed in terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunities and privileges within a society. The 4 principles of social justice, those of equity, access, participation and rights, are simply expressions of commonality within our communities. The difficulties come into play when the individuality has to give way in the promotion of equality for others. In June 2019, the government's disability unit became known as the Equality Hub and reassessed the focus to address all areas of inequality. Disparities including disability, ethnicity, gender, LGBTQ, and the overall framework of equality legislation for the UK. The development of a social justice programme in South Ribble recognised that an all-encompassing approach would be the most effective way to address often concomitant issues of inequality, rarely a single causative or contributing factor. I believe that in South Ribble we have become part of a wider movement against the fragmentation of service provision and its application at strategic and operational levels. I am particularly pleased to acknowledge that priority 1 on page 49 governs an equality framework and training underpinning in-house the consideration of social justice. The remaining priorities 2 and 3 are community driven in consultation. We sought a solution-focused approach to work towards tangible results. I believe that members have had the opportunity to read the document under consideration tonight. I'm sure there are questions and I'm happy to discuss those, although it may be helpful to have time to consider comments. I'd like you to consider the phrase, "They and we know that there is a right to access in principle in law, but they and we must work continually in order to claim that right." The burden for claiming that right should not sit with the disadvantaged individual, but with the community in which they live. There is always a cost involved. Recognition of that cost and the action we take in response either alleviates the burden or allows it to accumulate weight, resulting inevitably in acute crisis. In just one example, we have an opportunity to build a thriving high street community employing the 4 principles promoting equality. Under the town deal and in other projects, we can decide to build rather than build on, because inclusivity should never be an afterthought. The document before you tonight is a work in progress, a dynamic document, and one which seeks to bring concrete answers to experienced difficulties reported by our residents. If anyone here has any ideas to contribute to further enhance this programme, please contact me to discuss this further. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniela, and thanks, Jackie, again for that report. I think what would be probably more beneficial is we can discuss it now, Daniela, and where, if possible, you can answer the questions. If not, I think we can. It's most appropriate and probably more appropriate if we don't just put the questions into any questions that we do have, any comments in writing, and Jackie and yourself can respond on a one-to-one basis. As I said, I'll repeat what I said earlier. Really pleasing to see, how quickly that the officers and with Jackie and yourself pushing this, it's come forward to us as a cabinet. This is what we asked Jackie to do, and I just think it's great. And just as a way of an update, Gary and I were at the Cllr and South Ribble partnership yesterday, the economic forum. And it's fair to say that there's a huge number of all the major businesses from South Ribble and Cllr and Central Lancashire there, and social justice is very, very much front and centre on all of their corporate priorities. And as authorities, we reminded them of their requirement to ensure social justice is part of their any tender submissions to us, and understanding how it links in with the social value. And it fell upon organisations, and we're talking multinational organisations, who fully buy into it and support it, and actually asked to see a copy of the programme that we're working to. So that was really pleasing. Any other questions or comments, Mick?
Well, it's not necessarily a question, but I just want to agree with you and commend Jackie in particular and Daniela on this report. I think the thing that strikes me is on page 46, which is highlighted in blue, is that it's vital that we have a place that we place accessibility in the heart of everything that we do, and it's to ensure that South Ribble works for everyone and that everyone can fulfil their potential. And I think that is something that we live by, we exist for. I mean, and as far as we're concerned as an administration, and I think as a council, then everybody will welcome it. I mean, the big question is not to Jackie or to Daniela, but to all of us, of how we can drive it forward and achieve that, so that everybody does have the opportunity to fulfill their potential. So, I mean, it's something that we've got to line up behind and get on and deliver it. But it is, at the forefront and at the heart of everything that we do.
Cheers. Thanks, Mick. Any other comments from members on Cabinet? No? Any comments, questions from any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Ogilvie?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the one I wanted to ask about was page 50 and page 52. Consider how new developments can accommodate all needs. On page 52 it says this action has not started. It's not due to start until March 2022. I would have thought that the planning officers and the planning committee have been doing exactly that for ever and a day. Effectively, I'd just be interested, what additional things are we going to now be looking at in order to deliver that particular point?
Daniela?
It's a shame Jackie's not here because I can give you some really quick examples. That I don't want to speak on behalf of Jackie, but I know from the consultation what she's mentioned. So, for example, Preston Town Centre, she's mentioned that a few times in terms of the pedestrianisation of it, and the difficulty for people who maybe don't drive in understanding where a car can go and where someone can walk, because the pavements don't drop, or they do. The lines as well, so in terms of the lines where the flags change colour, you're supposed to be able to follow a line down the like on Huff Lane, we're looking at that kind of thing. It's how do we design that that pavement so it's suitable for lots of different people with lots of different disabilities and abilities. But Jackie also mentioned, for example, that if you go onto new housing estates, the paths end before you reach a play area. So if there's a mother with a buggy, for example, she has to push the buggy off the pavement across the end of a road to get to a play area, whereas it would be better for the pavement to continue right up to the play area. So it's things like that where the government have tried to do what I call like a planning for real, where not a planning for real, it's home zoning, where the pedestrian feels like they're the person who owns the street, but you're not. When there's a car on the street, you don't feel empowered to walk down the street if the pavement finishes. So those are just a few examples around developments that if you've got a disability or if you've got a baby in a buggy and things like that, you might feel vulnerable if you're walking around those places. So there's just a couple of examples. I don't know if Chris wants to come.
I suspect I can't really add very much to it, but the reality is that actually the planners do take a lot of things into consideration, but they have to work largely within the National Planning Policy Framework, which unfortunately uses a lot of things around highway standards. Those highway standards aren't necessarily written from a real person's point of view, with all the differing views that those people might have, and all those examples that Aniela's just explained. And the work that we're going to undertake is really exploring what are the things that we can do within the National Planning Policy Framework and the other restrictions we have, and working with the Highways Authority, for example, what are the things we can do to try and make things better for our residents and communities.
Yeah, thanks, Chris and Aniela. I think we've got to remember, haven't we, that some of the planning policy and building regs are a minimum standard, and where developers are looking to introduce minimum standards just isn't good enough. So why that date is in there in particular, I think what Jackie's looking at is just trying to tie this into the town fund, because what can happen is obviously with Bill and the team, they can influence the design. So the design can incorporate, it can go further than what building regs says, go further than what the highway regs say, and incorporate all these additional measures that make it really inclusive for everybody. And so that's what she's talking about as well. But it may be, Alan, that we look to develop some of our own local policies around this as well. So it's new, it's work in progress, and I think very much she's going to look at the town fund, the Leyland regeneration, as an opportunity for us to, again, exemplar what we're looking for others to do with us. And so that's what she means. That's why the dates are there. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. That was helpful.
Any other questions? Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. It's on page 52 and it's regarding the review of unadopted streets and roads. This is obviously a problem that is borough-wide and has implications for our residents, and it's something that has been ongoing for many years in some instances. And it's very difficult to get a road adopted if there has been some difficulty with the builder who has left something particularly not right in the specification. I'm just wondering, it's got an end date of March 2022, which doesn't seem, how are we going to monitor whether we have been able to succeed in actually being able to help people in this? And if not, would it be better to then maybe put the end date a bit further down the road? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. So there's two parts to this, and what you've said is what we've discussed quite a lot around estates being built, the developer moving on, and then the residents paying a management company to maintain the estate, and the council not adopting the estate because it's not in a fit state to be adopted. So that's what this is around. In terms of that date, what we want, we've considered changing the policy, and I'm not sure if we can. It's up to the government, I think, or Lancashire, because it's Lancashire County Council that have to adopt them. But what we want to do is we want to support resident associations. So we might be able to see how far we've got with that by 2022. So we want to support residents who aren't happy with the unadopted estates to come together to say we're not happy and we want it to become adopted. And I think that's the direction that Lancashire County Council choose. They say, well, if there's enough people on the estate that aren't happy that it's unadopted, and they all get together and work together, get the management company to bring it up to a certain standard, and then we'll adopt it. So I think this is around supporting residents to do it for themselves, if I'm right. Chris might, yeah.
So, do you know what? I'll bring you back in a second, Margaret. There's one of the things that frustrates me greatly, and I wish we could do this locally, but we can't. You know, if a developer hasn't completed the development in the borough appropriately, and it's been adopted by the Highways Authority or South Ribble if it's paving, etc., etc., then there should be a way through planning law to prohibit any more planning applications, in my view, until, you know, but the government won't allow that, you know. But it's something that I think we should keep pushing forward and keep pushing for. You finish that job and then you can start the next one. And do you know what? That would sort the problem, because this is a real blight for so many people in our local community. And it's, you know, take the money and run. And it's just not on, is it? So it's something that I know Aniela and Jackie are going to keep looking at. And I know this is in conjunction with Bill and the team and Jonathan, but it's challenging. Margaret?
Thank you for that explanation. Many years ago, we used to get endless lists from the county of unadopted roads that are across the board, not on estates, but isolated incidents of roads that aren't adopted. And people do really, really struggle to try and move those forward. And while this is very commendable, I'd like to see those other unadopted roads that are scattered about the borough, if those could be incorporated into it.
They are included. Jackie's had a personal experience in her ward where the entry and the rear of the 5 or 6 properties have been problematic, and that's where this came from. So it is for individual roads as well as or whole estates. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. It's been told by the Chief Executive not to say what I was going to say, but never mind. Councillor Bretherton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm aware of roads that in Penwitham, for example, where a new housing estate was built, but then the developer went bankrupt before they managed to finish the top surface, and roads like that have been over 10 years that I know about, just not been adopted. But in a situation like that, there probably isn't a management company that looks after the residents. They're just individual plots, maybe half a dozen to a dozen houses that have been built. The Lancashire County Council, as I understand, won't adopt it until it's in absolutely perfect condition. So there's obviously a cost involved, and that falls on the residents to fund it if the developer's gone bankrupt. So where's that finance going to come from? You're going to have to ask each individual resident to put £5,000 or £10,000 in to finish the road. So I think that's where the stumbling block will probably be. Who's going to fund it? if residents can't afford it. I mean, for example, you might get 3 residents can afford to do it, but the rest of them can't. So, what help will the residents get to?
Paul, can I?
Aniela, then Mick, then Matthew.
So the first phase of this is to identify who's having the problem and then support the residents to help themselves. The second part, I suppose, is looking at that kind of financial, but just to identify it first. But it's been raised as an issue. We're looking at it. So we're listening. You know, I can't tell you all the answers right now.
Yeah, well, somebody once said as if it was easy, it would have been done already. So I mean, it's been around for a while. We know that. I think we could all identify what the problems are. If anybody's got any solutions that they can bring forward, I think with the statement that Aniela read out from Jackie is that she would welcome any suggestions that would contribute to reaching a solution to the issues that have been identified here. But I mean, I think we've all, I mean, Jackie and Aniela has sort of identified what the problems are with the planning and with the unadopted roads. But I mean, working together, let's hope that we can resolve the matters.
So, Jonathan, there you go. Bill, will you just get it sorted, please? We'll have an update in the January meeting. No, joking aside, it's a problem, but do you know what? It's just going to take you need to keep pressuring the county council to work with us on this, and just the art of the possible, Damien, because it is grossly unfair on the people that are left having to foot the bill, and they shouldn't have to. The infrastructure should be completed first, shouldn't it? And then they should build the houses, and they should be adopted. Aniela?
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing, because this report obviously doesn't include climate justice or mental health either, but those are 2 separate. We've got a mental health lead as well, so we don't want to encroach on that, and we've also got a climate change lead, so we don't want to overlap. So these ideas are just standalone around social justice, around things residents have brought to our attention.
Thank you, Chair. From memory, and I'm sure Jonathan will agree or disagree, or some developers used to pay a deposit to ensure that the works were complete before they vacated or before they got the deposit back. And if they did vacate, then the deposit was of a reasonable sum that could have put some sort of stuff in place to make sure. I mean, we have 2 roads in Penwortham. I think the one that Councillor Bretherton alludes to, which is there's a lot more than just resurfacing the road. I think there's an issue, and we've had meetings with that. It's difficult because it is a lot of money. I mean, you're talking £120 a square metre of tarmac. And the other one, weirdly, is Stonecroft, built in the 70s and has still been unadopted. It's not been adopted for like 20 odd years. But it's wholly owned. All the properties are owned by Progress Housing, so they sort of deal with it. But there used to be a deposit. I believe there used to be a deposit scheme for smaller developers. I think, the trouble is that we used to. I think they used to be allowed to show the means that they could do it, but there was never a promise to sort of complete it because there was no leverage there to make them do it.
Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, some developments that have come forward have had legal agreements, whether it's a 106 or something through the highways, where the developer will put down a bond for the eventuality that they go bust or the management company goes bust. So that there are instances of that in the borough, but not all developments have had that on. But I guess this kind of topic and the aim is to make sure that new developments coming forward, we can manage those, but it's how we can help residents in the existing ones as well.
Okay, thank you. So I think we've debated that now, and then the report is for noting. So Daniel has proposed it for noting. I'm happy to second that. And is Cabinet happy to note? Yeah, note the report. And again, thank you, Jackie. And if there's any further comments, of course, we'll write to you. Agenda item 8 is the low carbon skills funding, public sector decarbonisation scheme, and quality grants. And it's the Deputy Leader, Councillor Mick Titherington, to present the item. Mick.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I think the report is self-explanatory. We had, I think in September, we had a full debate at council. We had an update at the last cabinet meeting at Bamber Bridge, and this is a further update. I mean, members will recall is that when we had the discussions about the bids for these funding streams, we did in fact anticipate that there would be a very small window in which we could apply for it, and that was the case. I'm pleased to report, because of the preparatory work that officers had done, we were able to get our bids in good time. Whether or not we're successful in getting them, we don't know yet, and we probably won't know until January. But I mean, this report is just asking members to note that the latest air quality and decarbonation grant bids, where we're up to on that, and to grant approval for the council to make necessary contributions towards the grant funding should the council be successful with the grant bids. So, and I mean, I think in the recommendations in the background, as I say, I think it's self-explanatory, and if there are any questions, I'll endeavour to answer them.
Thanks, Mick. I hope we get it. I really hope we get the grant. You know, it's good. It could have a massive impact locally. And I know, just a quick query, Mick, and I think it just stated within the report, but the council's contribution for the decarbonisation phase 3 of £203,000, that's already allocated anyway, because that's a like-for-like replacement programme on the existing facility, on the existing equipment, isn't it? Anyway, it's not an additional cost.
Yeah, well, I think we did approve that we would do the match funding. I mean, I think there was a query raised by Councillor Margaret Smith at the last cabinet meeting in relation to how the match funding is worked out, and it's worked out on the basis of the cost it would be to replace the fossil fuel generating with similar fossil fuel. So, I mean, I think we're clear on that now. I mean, and I think council has already approved the match funding.
Matthew?
Thanks, Leader. I'm sure all members will be keeping their fingers crossed that we do get these grants. And there's a couple of items under the air quality grant that I'd particularly like to highlight and welcome. Most members will know I'm a big fan of leisure cycling and people who cycle short distances. We know that an awful lot of car journeys in South Ribble are very short. Something like 20% of all car journeys in South Ribble are less than 1 kilometre. And I would say, with the geography we've got, you know, we are very lucky around here. It's very flat. And if you're going 1 kilometre, then cycling ought to be an option. And we see there that there is some ideas about how we can improve facilities for cyclists, and that should help air quality an awful lot. And also, as a Leyland member, I have to say any case study looking at HGV reduction within Leyland is to be welcomed. It's been an issue for a long time. I would say that Leyland's probably been built the wrong way around, with all the industrial stuff on the other side of town from the motorway junction, which means that the vast majority of HGVs, which, you know, let's be honest, they are providing services and employment for South Ribble people, but to get to most of the industrial estates, once you come off the motorway, you have to go through the town centre. So any study that looks at HGV reduction in Leyland is to be welcomed. And should we be successful with the grant, I'd be really interested in what that case study comes up with.
Thanks, Matthew. Any comments? Oh, sorry, Mick.
Just to say that, I mean, those issues that that Matthew has referred to under paragraph 25, I mean, these are issues that are fully discussed in the climate change emergency group. And I think only yesterday we were discussing ways and means about how we can individually and collectively help to reduce our own carbon footprints. So, I mean, I think it is in line with our sort of strategy and policy. I mean, this is addressing the issues in relation to the big six and other civic buildings, but all those things that are referred to in that 25 and that Matthew has referred to are things that are ongoing, and the task group is seeking to address. And I mean, and we've all got our part to play in that.
Yeah, thanks, Mick. I think one thing it does clearly demonstrate is the cost of carbon neutrality. We've said this all along, but cost can't get in the way. It can't be prohibitive. Any questions? Thanks, Mick. Any questions from any members? Councillor Karen Walton and then Alan Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on item 25, again, a bit like the question we asked before about charging for the electronic points. It says there's 4 cycle hubs to be located in Cllr. I presume it's on the car park. Will these be free for people to use, or will there be a charge? I know it might be too early to say yet.
Oh, the cycle hubs, yeah, they will be free. I mean, I think in relation to what you said about the charging points, and I think the leader responded. I mean, we've got to continuously be looking to get these anywhere we can, because there is a rapid growth in electric cars and all that. And it's important that we do have that. But in terms of,
I'm not criticising. I was just asking, with the facilities that are available, will they be free or a small charge so that people can park the bikes up and get on the train or the bus into Preston or wherever they want to work?
Well, I certainly hope that we would never charge for bikes, but if we're asking people to get on. I don't know,
if you look at the photograph, they're very nice and, locked and whatever. So it's just a question, just a concern more than anything.
They'll be free.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they'll be free, Karen. Councillor Alan Ogilvie, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, let's hope that the grant application is successful. The only concern I've got is in relation to paragraph 32 on page 58 concerning risk, where it says that failure to achieve the timescales may result in grant funding being reclaimed. Can you just give us a bit of clarification on what are these timescales that we're talking about, i.e. when's it supposed to start, when's it supposed to finish, and potentially what's the magnitude of the potential clawback in terms of pounds? Thanks.
Well, I mean, granting of the grants of the application is dependent on the work being carried out within a specific time, and I think it is acknowledged by the officers that if we are successful, then there is a hell of a lot of work to do. But I mean, well, we just have to do everything that we can to minimise that risk. I mean, I think it's just identified in the report, just to sort of say that, first of all, identifying the risk and what the consequences are. But I mean, we'll do everything that we can to sort of reduce that risk to the irreducible minimum.
Just on that as well, that clearly, if we're successful with the grants, Mick, there's going to be separate papers coming to Cabinet anyway on the procurement side of things, and it will say in there, Alan, clearly what the timescales involved in delivering the individual schemes. So I think we can't go absolutely firm at the moment because we don't know when we're going to get the grants as well. So there'll be separate papers coming forward, and it'll be absolutely clear that when we've got to spend the money by. I think that's what you're specifically asking, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, just have we got a ballpark idea of the duration of the works? That's really what I'm trying to get in my head.
Jen?
No, we're just waiting on the government announcement of the budget funding for decarbonisation. So we think there might be an announcement in January. So once we get that announcement in January, the budgets will be allocated, and the company who is called Civic, who is managing the grant system, will be in contact with us to talk about delivery dates and abilities to deliver the programme that we've assessed. So I think we'll know more in January, but as I say, there will be papers.
Sorry, one final question. So are we going to be dictated on what the timescale is that we have to achieve, or are they going to listen to what we believe that what time the job's going to take? That's two entirely different things.
We hope they'll listen, but the previous grants bids that we've got have been very tight timescales, so we've not really had a huge amount of justification from them about when we've got to spend it or listening to us, how long it will take. And there has been very tight timescales. And if we do deviate from those timescales, we have to find justifiable reasons why we've deviated. So there is a bit of leeway with them, but not very much.
So we need to expedite the procurement process the moment we get the nod. Councillor Angela Turner.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's back to the cycle hubs actually, which I think is a great idea. But I'll be honest with you now, one of the biggest reasons why I won't cycle into Preston to do my shopping is because I'm worried about the security of my push bike and if it's actually going to be there when I come back. I would hope that the Cabinet member responsible for the specification of these cycle hubs, which I think look great, but will consider the security element, because that's one of the, for me, a really discriminating factor, which I'm sure other people think about, is they like to cycle into Preston, go and do a bit of shopping, but they just can't guarantee that even if your bike's locked up, it's going to be there when you come back. I've also been in a situation where I lived in a city where they had something similar to these cycle hubs, and there were a few occasions where a lorry would turn up, believe it or not, the cheek of it, and empty the hub of all the bikes and shove them in the back and take them away. I'm not saying we've got criminals that would be that sophisticated, potentially in the northwest of England, but I'd hope that, I know, controversial, I'd hope that security will be taken into consideration so that you put your bike in one of these and you know it's going to be safe some way or other. Thank you.
Absolutely, we'll take that on board, yeah.
Thanks, Angela. Councillor Brotherton.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment. I do regular cycling to shop, both food shopping and into Preston. I'm quite comfortable to leave my push bike and lock it up. And that's probably because my push bike isn't worth stealing. So I think the idea is probably if you don't want your bike stealing, don't get an expensive one.
I think you're tempting fate there.
Yeah. Right, okay, let's move on. Thanks, Damien. So we've had the proposals from Councillor Titherington. The recommendations there. Sorry, member of the public, Bernard.
Thank you, Paul. I would like to query the first point in section 25, traffic monitoring systems, automatic number plate recognition cameras. Firstly, what will the specific AMPR identity data be used for? Secondly, will the vehicle ownership and even the identity of the flash driver be logged, and for what reason? Thirdly, if this data is logged, who will own the data? Who will have access to that data, and how long will the data be stored? And fourthly, will a code of practice be published for public scrutiny by SRBC on the methodology of number plate capture and the planned use of AMPR data?
Jem?
If you'd like to put that in writing, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Sorry? We'll write to you, Bernard. It's very detailed. We'll write to you with the answers. You drop it in an email.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah. We don't have the answers here in front of us.
Sorry?
We don't have the answers.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Paul, sorry. Can you ask Mr Titherington to talk into his mic? When he talks, you can't hear it. Oh, sorry. No, can you ask Mr Titherington when he talks, can he talk into his mic? He is doing. Can't hear him at the back here.
It is Councillor Titherington, and it wasn't me who was speaking.
Bernard, if you turn your microphone off,
sorry,
then it works better. But Margaret, we are moving on now.
It's just a point. I have reasonably good hearing and I can hear, but I do think that a lot of people are actually struggling at this end of the chamber because either the sound isn't projecting quite well or it needs turning up slightly.
I think it's because we've got the doors open, I'm freezing, and we've got the aircon on. So I think people just need to try a bit harder, that's all. Yeah.
Right, okay. Right, let's move on. We've got strict COVID regulations that we're still working to about ventilation, hence why the machines are on. Right, so Councillor Tillerington's made his recommendations to Cabinet. I'm more than happy to second those. Is everybody in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, agenda item 9 is the Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring Report. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson to present this item.
Thanks, Leader, and just remark on the fact that it's lovely that somebody wants to hear Mick talking, because that's not always the case. There's a lot of recommendations here because I've got the scrutiny ones from Monday's presentation to the Budget and Performance Management Task Group, so I'll read those out first. The Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel thanks the Cabinet member for their report and answering their questions. Asks that consideration be given to the housing benefit surplus of 149,000 being used to improve the speed of processing housing benefit claims. Looks forward to an update on the recruitment of apprentices and reducing the £44,000 underspend in that area, and expresses its gratitude to the Cabinet member and the staff who arranged for the site visit to Worden Hall held on the 12th of November. Just the two particular asks of the performance panel around housing benefit surplus and the recruitment of apprentices. I can confirm we're looking at that and we'll come back to the panel with an answer and be as positive as we can be, because they were perfectly legitimate questions. On the revenue monitoring report, the recommendations are to note the forecast position for revenue and reserves as at the 30th of September. And if you'll bear with me while I scroll through to the front page of the section on the capital programme, recommendations to Cabinet to approve the revised capital programme as attached at Appendix A, to note the variations to the programme which are detailed at Appendix B, and to note the position in the balance sheet monitoring section of the report as at the 30th of September 2021. I do have some last minute recommendations, if you'll bear with me. Members will know that within the capital programme we have £175,000 designated to refurbish the existing sports club and changing facilities at the Vernon Cllr Sports Club, and this was agreed by full council in September. I can tell Cabinet that we've received an offer of £50,000 additional funding to support and enhance this work, if we can provide a further £25,000 of match funding. So tonight I'm going to seek approval from Cabinet to increase the capital programme by £75,000, bringing the total spend at Vernon Cllr up to £250,000, acknowledging that £50,000 of that will be externally funded. So that's an extra recommendation, and I noticed Darren is scribbling away, and I'm sure he'll turn that into something legally appropriate. If we can go back to the reports themselves, as far as the, excuse me, I am trying to go paperless. It's not always easy, but I am persisting. As far as the report itself is concerned, I think this is a steady as you go report, really. We're at 6 months in now, and we're now forecasting that at the end of the year, we'll have an underspend of £274,000 against our original budget. There is some commentary in the report on pages 64, 65, and 66 about that revenue underspend, and there's further detail on that in Appendix 1. Yeah, Appendix 1. there's some commentary, or there's a report on our balances in reserves, Appendix 3. Appendix 4 looks at our staff vacancies, and members will note that quite a few of those vacancies are within teams where we're currently having ongoing reviews, and so I would expect those to drop off the list as the those reviews are completed. As far as the capital programme is concerned, we are suggesting some reprofiling, and there's a couple of big ticket items there that are really skew the figures that I'd just like to speak to. Members will know the delay we've had delivering the affordable houses at Mackenzie Arms. We'd hoped to spend £1.71 million on that project this year. We're now saying we won't spend it this year, but we are committed to spending it next year. So we're not saying we won't spend the money, but we are going to reprofile that into next year's capital programme. And the town deal work in Leyland Town Centre, we'd forecast to spend £3.5 million on the master plan and getting the town deal to REBA stage 3. With that project, really we're working to a timetable that's set by the government and not by us, and so it's quite clear to us now we're not going to spend that money this financial year. So again, we want to put that into next year's budget. So again, a commitment, we will be spending the money. It's just when we'll get round to spending it. And there's one other big item there, and that's about vehicle plant replacement programme. And again, we will be spending that money, but we're not going to be spending it quite as soon as we thought. Anything else? I'm prepared to ask questions. It is quite a detailed report, so I'll do my best to answer them myself. I'm very grateful to have our Section 151 officer sat next to me. So if you want to ask any technical questions or more detailed questions, I'm sure, no pressure, I'm sure she'll be able to answer them for you.
Thanks, Matthew, and again, thank you from the Cabinet, on behalf of the Cabinet and the Council, for the detail and the way that the report is presented. It's really straightforward to follow now and answers the questions that we clearly all have. Just a couple of points, if I may, Matthew. In regards to the housing benefits surplus of 149k to improve the speed of processing of the housing benefits, I think we sort of mentioned this earlier, didn't we? I think it's important to point out to Cabinet that the shared services highlighted this as a challenge as well last night, and shared services approved the reorganisation and of that area of the council. And one of the main reasons for that, Matthew, is actually for to very quickly speed up those processing numbers and bring them down to 5 or 6 days. You could be looking 2 or 3 weeks off that, which is absolutely wonderful for our local community who are in need of those benefits. And I think that's with the digitisation programme. So it could be you don't need to spend that money. You may need to, you may not. But my point to you is it's clearly a priority for the Scrutiny Committee, and it's a priority for us. And my second point is the additional 25k that you've asked for tonight. We do apologise to Council for the late notice on this recommendation. It was only presented, the offer was presented to us yesterday afternoon, and we clearly do have our own concerns internally as well, don't we, about the quality of particularly the changing facilities, where we need some additional monies for the young people that want to use those facilities down at Vernon's. But you are hoping, I understand, Matthew, that 25k will most probably come from underspends and balances that were within this year's budget, not necessarily from reserves. My 2 points, thank you.
I think on the housing benefit stuff, and one of the undoubted benefits of shared services is to organisations learning from each other. And after yesterday's meeting, a member of Cllr Council spoke to me informally and said, why are we so good at some things and they're so good at others? And hopefully a shared service will enable that learning to go across both sets of staff and improve both sets of figures, which I know both members at Cllr are keen to see, and we certainly are keen to see here. As to the 25,000 that I'm asking Cabinet to approve, to be frank, I could have just signed it off. It's 25,000. As an exec member, I could have just signed it off as an exec decision. But, you know, transparency and openness, and wanting to do these things in public, we decided to bring it to Cabinet, albeit as a last-minute amendment to the report. So, yeah, ideally, I'd have given everybody a week's notice and published it with the original papers. But as I said, within the Constitution, I'm perfectly within my rights to just sign it off in a meeting and say to people, if you want to call this in, you can do. But I'd much rather do it here in public at Cabinet.
Absolutely, and we've been offered £50,000 contribution. It'd be foolish for us to turn that down. Any comments from or questions for Matthew from any members on Cabinet? No, any members not on Cabinet? No, sorry, Councillor Mrs Smith.
Just a quick question, Mr Chairman. You mentioned the £50,000 that some organisation has kindly offered for the Vernon Carers. Are you permitted to say who that 50,000 is coming from?
I'd really prefer not to, unless they give their express permission, which in the fullness of time, I'm sure it will become clear to everybody. But until they formally say, yes, you can, I don't think it's a secret, but I haven't had express permission to say who it's from. So for now, I'd probably rather not.
But I specifically asked the question yesterday, and the answer was no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Margaret. Any other questions from any members? Any questions from member of the public? So you can't ask anything, Bernard, because it's all positive, good news, isn't it? Which is really pleasing. We've kept Mr Derbyshire quiet. That's good. Right. So Matthew's put his proposals forward. If you could, I'm not asking you, Matthew, to reconfirm the recommendations in the report because they're in writing, but I think it's important that because it is verbal, if you can just reconfirm the additional recommendation regarding the 25k, if that's possible. Sorry.
Okay. I don't know if Darren's pre-written anything, so if Darren wants to read out what he's got.
Thank you, Chair. Just some words, a suggestion really. Cabinet approves an increase in the capital programme for the Vernon Carers Sports Club project of £75,000, £50,000 externally funded and £25,000 from the Council's own capital programme funds. Thank you, Chair.
Right, I'm happy to second that. Any members against? Good, that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 10 is the West Paddock Extra Care Procurement Strategy. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson to present this item.
Thank you, Leader. As members know, we have an ambition to provide an extra care housing facility on the land adjacent to the Civic Centre. We're now at a stage where we want to go out to procurement to find somebody who can actually build it for us. This is just the strategy. So this is not about the tenders or the cost. This is the strategy that we're going to use to go out to procurement. And the recommendations to Cabinet to approve a two-stage tender process, to approve the tendering of the scheme to appoint a contractor at REBA Stage 3, to approve the use of the Northwest Construction Hub framework with an evaluation weighting of 70% quality, including 20% social value and 30% cost as stipulated by the Northwest Construction Hub. Using the Northwest Construction Hub, of course, will help us even more to ensure that this is a builder with a real investment in the place that we live, and again tying into those social values that Aniela referred to earlier. To approve the use of any C4 engineering construction form of contract to appoint a contractor and to delegate the award of a contractor for Stage 1 and Stage 2 to the executive member for finance, property and assets. I'm going to be really upfront with everybody. Procurement is not my forte, but I know that the leader does this in his personal life. So big picture stuff, I'm all right on this. If it's a detailed question about procurement, I may have to demur to the leader, but I'm happy to move those recommendations.
I do interesting things as well in my spare time, honestly. But the right, no, this is thanks, Matt. And again, I mentioned earlier, didn't I, that we were at the Economic Forum for Chorley and South Ribble yesterday, and we had some as you say, some of the major contractors, regional contractors represented there, and they were waxing lyrical about the fact that the decision, this is the recommendation to as a two-stage tender, because these local contractors, and we're talking two of the contractors listed on the Northwest Framework, based in Bamber Bridge, for example, and they are big regional contractors doing work all over the country, and they're now in a position where they are most certainly probably going to look to bid in now, whereas if it's just purely a competitive one-stage tender, many don't. But so that's pleasing, number one, that the local business community behind this. But secondly, it fits, as you said, Matthew, right in with the community wealth building programme and the procurement that Aniela's been working on with the team and yourself, because it comes back to the community wealth. The pound spent in South Ribble is back into this resident's pocket, so it's really pleasing to see. Now, that's not second-guessing any of the procurement, because it is a fair process dealt with by the officers, but I am particularly pleased that the two-stage has been selected, and the reason for that is the fact that it gives the contractor time to work with Mark and his team to influence the design to get the costs and the programme to where we need to be. Because a lot of the single stage and design and build sometimes lends itself to you're not actually getting what you want at the end, because it's just been, the design development has just dragged down the quality. However, as a two-stage tender, basically the contractors feeding in with us and feeding and developing the design, so you get what you want for the money and the programme. So it's pleasing to see. And clearly there's the 20% social value weighting as well, Aniela, which we've been pushing for. And on some of these bigger schemes as well, I'm hoping that we start seeing, if there is a local contractor that's lucky enough to be selected, that, we need some local jobs for our young people as well, and also the using of our supply chain. All tick, tick, tick. So we're really pleased. And this is where, I know at times people have said to us, we can't influence procurement locally. We can, and we are doing, and that's what the proposals is in front of us today. We need to work quickly on this now as well. Mark and the team are really pushing to get this extra care scheme to the next stage through REBA. I think we're going to REBA, ultimately go to REBA stage 4 with this, Mark, don't you, when we sign contracts, the detailed design, and then we can get on building it. We've got to be cognizant of the inflation. We've seen normal inflation is up to 4.2% today. Construction inflation is still running away with itself, and it's probably 20% still, and it's quite possibly it's the single biggest risk. So the sooner we procure, the sooner we contract, the less of a risk financially to the authority. So I'm more than happy to second your proposals, Matt. Any questions from any members on Cabinet?
Just to say, when we run a consultation on this, a public consultation, it was overwhelmingly in favour of it. So if we're talking about the speed of getting it built there, I mean, I think the majority of people who come to express an opinion were wanting to put their names down for a place there. So there is a clear demand for it, and there is an urgency to it. So glad to approve.
Absolutely. Did you get your name? Did you get your one? You'll have me for that later, won't you? And again, feedback from the business community yesterday again is one of the things we were quite. Alistair Bradley and I were quite happy to ask the local business community what we can do better in respect to this, and they were, quicker. That's one criticism of local government, is we all tend to work a little bit too slow at times. We don't work slow, and Mark and his team are acutely aware of this, and they're pushing this forward now as quick as they can. It's to benefit everybody, because ultimately there's a desperate need for these type of apartments in the borough. Any questions from members not on Cabinet? Councillor Brotherton and then Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've read through this. There was just something I just want a bit of clarity on. I'm not too sure exactly what the wording means. Page 108. At the top of the page, there's a last sentence of a paragraph there. The viability to use this space to accommodate alternative business models such as cooperative cafe and/or hairdresser will be considered, with the aim of creating quality local jobs and retention of locally created wealth within South Ribble. I just wonder if you could clarify, what does that mean exactly? For example, locally created wealth.
Yeah, I think that's for you, isn't it?
I can try. So from the point of view of community wealth building and the creation of wealth, wealth is created by the labour. So the hairdresser is the person who creates the wealth by producing haircuts. So in terms of the cooperative, it's around, instead of one hairdresser having a salon and hiring out chairs, you have 5 chairs in it, but each person who owns a chair is an owner of the hairdressers, so they share that. They have a central dividend, I suppose, a central pot where they put some of the money that they make and they use that, and that stays within the community. So I would advise you, if you are interested, to look at cooperative models, because it means that the people own their own businesses and 5 or 6 hairdressers could own it. And that money stays locally because those hairdressers will live locally and potentially.
So the wealth refers to is financial. It's financial.
And it's
wealth.
also community as well. That's why it's community wealth, like joined together in that.
Okay.
We're converting you, Damien, aren't we? We are definitely converting you. I thought you were going to say we can get another 20 on if we should make them a bit smaller, but never mind. Any other questions from anyone? Sorry, Councillor Ogilvie and then Councillor Matt Trafford.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you've partly addressed my question already, and that's in relation to, if you like, commitment from contractors, because this report does mention that the estimated cost is 12 to 13 million. But it also says that we only have an approved budget of 10 million. So if I was a contractor, I'd be shaking my head and saying, ooh, I don't want to get involved in that at this particular moment in time. And according to the timetable, the tender period is supposed to start in the very near future, 29th of November. So I just wondered what discussions you had with them on that particular point. Another query I've got just is in relation to paragraph 39 on social value. There's clearly a number of lines there that tenderers would have to fill in, giving, if you like, promises of what they're going to do. How would that be managed during the contract, and what penalty will be included in the contract should they not actually achieve what they're claiming for in the tender? Thank you.
Will Whipham. On the second point, I think it's a shame that not more members went on the tour of Worden Hall with the scrutiny committee, because the contractors, the attorneys, took us through their induction that they take all the staff through and all visitors to the site. And as a matter of course, these people are now embedding social value into the work that they do. So they were able to tell us about employing local apprentices, the fact that they've subcontracted some of the work to other companies, Preston-based, what they do with the waste and how it's all managed, how they work with local colleges on training and skills. This isn't something, I think, we're not forcing these people to do. This is what these big companies are now doing. As they recognise how they can contribute to the economy in which they work. So I think this is no longer the stick, it's the carrot. And these companies, once they know that's what we're interested, they find it really easy. I was really impressed with Tony's presentation at Worden Hall, and I know that the members of the scrutiny committee were too. There was another question about the budget.
It's also the social value portal, Matt, that you use to monitor the performance in regards to that as well, isn't there? The 10 million, obviously, the council, Alan, has approved £10 million of spend. That excludes any Homes England grant funding. That's circa six. It's anyway. So there's the rest, Alan, is made up from grants that we pull together. But you can't apply for the grants until you've got planning and you've basically done all your procurement.
Right, so there is an element of will they, won't they, in terms of the grant?
No, they will. Yeah, it is. It's coming. The money from Homes England is coming in. It's sat there now, but to finalise and sign it all off, we have to have certain milestones met, which we're working through with them.
Just on that, I mean, I think I'm right in saying it was 60,000 a unit. That's agreed. It's not. We're not. You know, it's not a grant that we might or might not get for building this type of unit. It's 60,000. I'm aware that with the inflationary pressures that are in the market for construction, those discussions are going on with Homes England now about whether 60,000 is still appropriate and whether it should be 65 or even 70 a unit, or Gary's saying, or even 75. But, you know, with all these, we've got all these inflationary costs. Everybody acknowledges they're there. At some stage, something has got to give, you know. So I'm presuming now house builders are increasing the cost of a new house to the purchaser because they're having these increased costs. And so we will have to look, when we finally get a figure that takes in these increased costs, how much are we going to get from Homes England? Is it going to affect the level of an affordable rent going forward? Because if there's an extra cost to building the thing, I don't think it's reasonable for anybody to say, but we'll let you rent it out for the amount that we agreed you could rent it out when we thought it was going to cost 10 million. So all those discussions will have to be had. But is there any doubt about getting the funding from Homes England? I don't think there isn't. It's just how much will it be? And it will be per unit.
Yeah, you just submit your appraisals, Alan, when it's all, as Matthew says, when it's all done. That's why you need your final tender price as well. I was going to add something there, but I'm not going to bother now because I forgot. Councillor Trafford.
Thanks, Chair. I sort of approached this report a bit like Councillor Bretherton, but in reverse. I found myself going through most of the report with almost everything flying right over my head and having to research what all these different procurement terms actually mean. And then I get to page 108 and I say, oh, I know about that. And that's absolutely brilliant. So it's not a question. It's just, I'm just really pleased to see that we're considering using cooperative business models, especially using local businesses as well, because it would have been, I'm sure, quite easy to have someone like Costa Coffee administering a cafe, but then the wealth that's generated goes to wherever their HQ is, and will probably have wealth hoarded as well. So it's really good to see that the labour created by people in South Ribble will generate the wealth that it deserves, and that wealth will stay in South Ribble as well. So well done to yourselves. I'm really pleased to see that. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Any other comments from anyone? No. Any comments, Bernard? No. Good. So, Matt, you've got your recommendations there. We won't ask you that they're in print. We won't ask you to go through them. You've proposed that. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Titherington seconded it. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Oh, Matthew again. So, agenda item 11, refurbishment of the home playground in Bamber Bridge. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. We did agree a budget for this project at our budget setting meeting, so everybody's known how much we're prepared to spend on this. We've gone out to tender to see what we could actually get for that money, and the tenders are now in. Really important to point out there's been no investment in the home playing field playground since 1999, so it's 22 years since this council spent any money, any significant money on this playground. So I think everybody will agree it's well overdue. The tenders are in, and as we can see, tender number 1 scored 97 out of a possible 100 on the tender process, and is now we're now being asked to approve granting the contract for the works to bidder 1 in table 1, appendix A, and hopefully we can crack on with the work. A local member asked me when, because of course when you're a local member you don't want to know the hows and the wheres, you want to know when, and if things go to plan, this new playground should be open for April of next year.
Thanks, Matthew. Do we have a second? I'm not going to second this purely because I have no interest, but it's in my ward, so I'll ask one of the members of the Cabinet to second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Titherington. Any comments for Matthew? Anyone? Any comments from members not on committee? Councillor Caleb Tomlinson.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Matthew, for your email with the timescale. 6 years I've been a councillor for Bambury West, and 6 years I've been getting it thick and fast of people who say this is a playground that's been left to rot. And yeah, 22 years is a long, long time. So thanks for the input. Thanks for the great piece of work that's been done. And I think the residents of my ward will be elated with the results. Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb. Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a bit of clarification, if you can. The 225k budget is in the capital programme. Can you confirm if that's coming from 106 money? And if the answer to that is yes, which 106 agreement is the money coming from? Thank you.
I'll have to get back to you, Alan. I really couldn't say at this stage, but we'll make a note of your question and we'll get back to you.
Any other? Yeah, Alan will write to you with that answer. Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? Any questions from a member of the public? No. Good. So the recommendation has been proposed by Councillor Tomlinson, seconded by Councillor Titherington, that we award the contract for the works at the Home Park Playground to bidder 1. All those in favour? Unanimous. Right, so moving swiftly on, we now unfortunately have to exclude the press and public as we have to go into private session for the joint insurance procurement. Can officers